Jacksonville with the Jaguars, Urban Meyer. The situation just continues to kind of boil over, and this continues to kind of rotten and decay right now. In fact, they've reached what's quote unquote a crisis mode. So obviously, we know that a video leaked and surfaced last week after the Jacksonville Jaguars lost to the Cincinnati Bengals on a Thursday night football game, 24-21. Urban Meyer was filmed at his own restaurant in Cincinnati, or in Columbus, Ohio, rather. And the video shows that he was with some people. There was a young woman that appeared to be either giving him some kind of lap dance or in his lap, and his hands obviously touching her bottom of this woman. So we know what the image shows. We know what the video says. And so Jacksonville Jaguars owner Shad Khan came out and basically reprimanded him publicly, saying that Urban needs to regain the trust of the team, and that his actions and his conduct are inexcusable. And mind you, this is all within the first 4 weeks of his first stint in the NFL. This guy hasn't even reached Thanksgiving, and there's already controversy. There's already a huge conundrum right now for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And his slogan that he had been frequently using both in college and now at the NFL is "Own It," to try and rebuild this franchise that's been moribund and been one of the worst franchises in the NFL. His slogan is "Own It." Now, certainly that slogan appears to be aging quite well when we look at it now. And let me first start from the personal side of things. This is a terrible look. And I don't even need to delve into the relationship between he and between him and his wife and his family and his kids. I'm not going to get too much into that. The only thing I'll say about that is my mom's a therapist, and she sees struggling couples and divorced couples all the time. And this is a relationship that will certainly need some counseling and need to undergo some therapy to fix their marriage and fix the whole dynamics between the kids and the relationship between he and his wife. So that's a given. That goes without saying. And I don't need to really delve more into that. But this is just an atrocious look from a guy who's supposed to be the CEO of the franchise, the CEO and the corporate leader, the authority figure, the guy with the most responsibility to hold everyone accountable within this Jacksonville Jaguars franchise and the team. And there's no question that when we look at Urban Meyer, I'll first say this: we know he's always had a bit of a checkered past. In fact, you look at his previous stints, it's always been marred by some scandal kind of hanging over every organization he's been with. Florida in 2009, his assistant coach, who was also the wide receivers coach, Zach Smith, had apparently abused and sexually assaulted his then girlfriend, now wife, in Gainesville. And that controversy carried with him to Ohio State, where once again that same assistant coach, Zach Smith, had allegedly or he was involved in other sexual assault allegations, I think with the same woman. And then obviously once he reached, and that was at Ohio State, then once he was hired by the Jacksonville Jaguars, he hired Chris Doyle, the former Iowa strength and conditioning coach, who had uttered racial slurs and racial remarks towards his players that got him to resign immediately. And immediately the day following his acceptance as a new kind of coach, strength and conditioning coach for the Jaguars, he was forced to resign because of the backlash. Understandable. So all of this has already been part of Urban Meyer's past. So we've known that he's made some really bad judgment calls during his previous stints. But that was to be expected because that was who Urban Meyer had been up until this point. And he's taken this mantra of it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. I've said this before. Winning can cure a lot of things. When you're winning, when you're successful in life, that can mask so many other deficiencies, so many other potholes that may exist within your own personal life, within your relationship with other people, because success is ultimately the most important thing for a lot of people. You look at Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, even Robert Kraft has openly admitted in this recent kind of book that just came out by Seth Wickersham that Bill Belichick is a piece of work. Well, the only reason why he can get away with it and players are willing to accept kind of his barbaric and a bit antiquated coaching methods and more traditional coaching methods are because he has proven that this can work. There is efficacy. There's proof of the efficacy in his methods. Coach Greg Popovich in the NBA, he could coach players extremely hard because Tim Duncan was willing to take it. And it resulted in a lot of winning. So when you have the proof that a concept, that a method, that a style of teaching works, then you can get away with a lot of stuff. And for the majority of Urban Meyer's career, throughout his collegiate career, he's constantly been a winner. 17-6 in 2 years at Bowling Green, 22-2 in 2 seasons at Utah. This is a guy who won 2 national championships at Florida, a national championship at Ohio State where he won 90% of his games, 83 and I believe 9 was his record. So 83-9 in 7 years. The problem we're having here is he's not winning. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 0-4 this year. They've lost 19 consecutive games dating back to last season. So who is going to gloss over and show leniency to a quarterback, not to a quarterback, to a head coach that isn't going to practice what he preaches? He's preaching all these values. He's preaching these important values. And yet he's not willing to do it himself. So of course he's going to lose the locker room. And of course the players, and it was reported that one of the players said he's got zero credibility within the locker room. Of course, that makes perfect sense. That's not surprising to me at all. In fact, for me, because, and not to mention he probably had little faith, the players probably had little faith in him to begin with by the mere fact that he'd never coached in the NFL before. But what stands out to me is I always kind of thought about this. This was always a lingering thought of mine, is I never really knew how much Urban Meyer really wanted this Jacksonville Jaguars job. Because to me, he always has appeared a bit apathetic, a bit disinterested from the jump, despite the fact that he was inheriting draft rights to a generational quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. But let's really think about how Urban Meyer got here. This was a guy that had been ridden out of Ohio State because of health concerns and a potential scandalous development that could have been exposed. But his health concerns, he wanted to retire. This is a guy who was an analyst at Fox for 2 years. He had zero intentions of coming out of retirement to coach. He was perfectly content just being an analyst, or at least just not coaching, with the anxiety, with the stress that it entails, and eventually kind of had to be wooed and forced out of retirement because of an offer that was too lucrative to pass up. And that's really what it was. There was an offer that was too lucrative for him to pass up. And so sometimes some opportunities are too lucrative to pass up on. So I always question in the back of my mind what his true motivation was, whether he really wanted this job. Because in the NFL and in any head coaching job, in any profession, you got to be all in. If you're not all in, you're not going to have success. And it's simple as that. The players can read through it. Clearly, he's lost that credibility. And I'll say this. The actual incident itself, when you isolate the incident itself, I don't necessarily think that the isolated incident itself is necessarily a fireable offense. And I'm not saying that it is, but if the players all of a sudden don't respond to the coach, if his messages aren't getting through, if they no longer trust him or believe in him and he's lost the locker room, well, then change has to come. Because at the end of the day, you might be the most qualified coach. You might have the credentials. But if the players don't like you, if they don't believe in you, if they don't buy into what you're saying, then what are you there for? That's really the reality. And unfortunately, this video perhaps may perfectly embody what his time was going to be there. Maybe it encapsulates what the time was that he spent with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, not a good look at all. Again, I think that Urban Meyer is a brilliant head coach. I think he has a brilliant football mind. But that doesn't negate the fact that it was just a dumb decision. And at least he acknowledged it to some degree. I'm not advocating for him to lose his job over this necessarily, but if the players think it's time for him to go, then it's time for him to go.